Canadian politics. A snooze fest, right? Well, buckle up because Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just dropped a bombshell resignation that's sending shockwaves from Ottawa to Wall Street.
Whoa, that's quite the opener. What's the story behind this sudden departure?
Well, it's like watching a political house of cards collapse in real time. Trudeau, the 53-year-old son of former PM Pierre Trudeau, has been facing a perfect storm of challenges. We're talking skyrocketing food and housing costs, controversial immigration policies, and a loss of support both within his party and across the country. It's as if he's been trying to juggle flaming chainsaws while riding a unicycle on a tightrope.
That's quite the vivid image. How do you think this resignation will impact Canada's political landscape?
Oh, it's going to be seismic. The Liberal Party is now in a mad scramble to find a new leader before Parliament resumes on March 24th. And here's the kicker. All three opposition parties have said they'll bring down the Liberal government in a no-confidence vote at the first opportunity. It's like watching a high-stakes game of political musical chairs.
So we could be looking at a completely new Canadian government in the near future. How are the polls looking for the Liberals?
Well, let's just say if the polls were a weather forecast, the Liberals would be facing a Category 5 hurricane. The latest Nanos poll shows them trailing the opposition Conservatives 47% to 21%. That's not just a gap, it's a chasm. It's like they're trying to win a marathon while starting 20 miles behind everyone else.
Ouch. That's a pretty dire situation. So, who are the frontrunners to replace Trudeau as the Liberal Party leader?
Now that's where it gets interesting. We've got a real mixed bag of candidates. First up is Mark Carney, the former head of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. This guy's CV reads like a who's who of global finance. He's credited with helping Canada dodge the worst of the 2008 financial crisis and guiding the UK through the Brexit mess. But, and it's a big but, he's got zero political experience. It's like he's got the financial chops of Warren Buffett, but the political savvy of, well, Warren Buffett.
That's an interesting mix of qualifications. Are there any candidates with more political experience in the running?
Oh, absolutely. We've got Chrystia Freeland, who until recently was one of Trudeau's most trusted lieutenants. She resigned from the cabinet last month, which was like watching the first domino fall in Trudeau's political collapse. Then there's Dominic LeBlanc, the new finance minister and a longtime Trudeau buddy. Get this, LeBlanc was actually Trudeau's babysitter when he was a kid. Talk about a long-term investment in networking.
Wow, that's quite a connection. But let's zoom out for a moment. How might this political upheaval in Canada affect its relationship with the United States?
Well, that's where things get really spicy. This political drama is unfolding against a backdrop of rising tensions with the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has been rattling his saber, threatening to slap a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods. He's been calling Canada the 51st state and demanding they stem the flow of migrants and drugs into the U.S. It's like watching a geopolitical reality show, but with real-world consequences.
That sounds like it could have some serious economic repercussions. Just how significant is the trade relationship between the U.S. and Canada?
Oh, it's massive. We're talking about billions of dollars flowing back and forth across that border every year. In fact, Canada's ambassador to Washington, Kirsten Hillman, recently dropped a bombshell. The U.S. had a $75 billion trade deficit with Canada last year. But here's where it gets interesting. About a third of what Canada sells to the U.S. is energy exports, and there tends to be a deficit when oil prices are high. It's like a complex economic tango, and right now nobody's sure who's leading.
So if Trump follows through on his tariff threats, what might that mean for both countries?
Well, if Trump pulls the trigger on those tariffs, we could be looking at a full-blown trade war. Canada's already said they'll retaliate if it happens. It's like watching two heavyweight boxers squaring up in the ring. The potential for economic damage on both sides is huge. And it's not just about government-level decisions. These kinds of trade disputes can hit everyday people right in the wallet, affecting jobs, prices, and the overall economy.
That's a sobering thought. How do you think the next Canadian leader will handle these challenges?
Whoever takes over is going to need the political skills of Machiavelli and the diplomatic finesse of, well, anyone but Trump. They'll need to navigate this complex relationship with the US, manage Canada's economic challenges, and try to win back voter confidence, all while potentially staring down the barrel of an upcoming election. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while blindfolded and riding a unicycle.
That's quite an image. Speaking of the upcoming election, what can you tell us about the opposition?
Well, the Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre, is currently riding high. Poilievre is a bit of a firebrand. He's been the party's attack dog for years and has positioned himself as a populist leader. He's been hammering Trudeau on the cost of living crisis, and it seems to be resonating with voters. He's made some bold promises too, like scrapping the carbon tax and defunding the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It's a stark contrast to Trudeau's more progressive policies.
So we could be looking at a significant shift in Canadian politics if the Conservatives win. How might that affect Canada's image on the world stage?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Canada has long positioned itself as this progressive, welcoming beacon on the international stage. Under Trudeau, it's been known for its stance on issues like climate change, immigration, and multilateralism. A Conservative government under Poilievre could potentially shift that image dramatically. It's like Canada is standing at a crossroads with two very different paths ahead.
It sounds like Canada is in for some significant changes no matter what happens. How do you think this will affect everyday Canadians?
Well, that's really the heart of the matter, isn't it? At the end of the day, politics is about people's lives. We're talking about potential changes to economic policies that could affect jobs, wages, and the cost of living. We're looking at possible shifts in social policies that could impact everything from healthcare to education. And let's not forget about the potential international ramifications. Changes in trade policies or international relations could have ripple effects throughout the Canadian economy. It's like every Canadian is about to embark on a national roller coaster ride, and no one's quite sure where it's going to end up.
That's a lot for Canadians to process. Do you think there's a risk of political fatigue setting in?
Oh, absolutely. We've seen in other countries how constant political turmoil can lead to voter apathy or even disillusionment with the democratic process. But here's the thing. This is also an opportunity for increased civic engagement. These big political shifts often motivate people to become more involved, to educate themselves about the issues, and to make their voices heard. It's like the whole country is getting a crash course in civics.
That's an interesting perspective. How do you think this situation in Canada compares to political transitions in other countries?
Well, every country has its unique political landscape, but there are some interesting parallels we can draw. In many ways, what we're seeing in Canada reflects broader global trends: rising populism, concerns about the cost of living, debates over immigration policy. It's like Canada is a microcosm of larger global political shifts. But what makes this situation particularly interesting is the speed at which it's unfolding. We're talking about a potential complete change in government direction in a matter of months. It's like watching a political fast-forward button being pressed.
So what should we be watching for in the coming weeks and months?
There are several key things to keep an eye on. First, the Liberal Party leadership race. That's going to be crucial in determining the direction of the party and potentially the country. Then there's the Conservative Party strategy. How will they capitalize on this opportunity? We should also be watching for any developments in US-Canada relations, particularly any concrete moves on those threatened tariffs. And of course, we need to keep an eye on the economic indicators. How will this political uncertainty affect Canada's economy? It's like we're watching a multi-dimensional chess game, with moves and counter-moves happening on multiple boards simultaneously.
That's a lot to keep track of. Any final thoughts on this developing story?
Well, I think the key takeaway here is that we're witnessing a pivotal moment in Canadian history. The decisions made in the coming weeks and months could shape Canada's direction for years to come. It's a reminder of how dynamic and unpredictable politics can be, and how quickly things can change. Whether you're in Canada, the US, or anywhere else in the world, this is a story worth following. It's like we're all front-row spectators to a major shift in the geopolitical landscape of North America.
That's certainly food for thought. Thank you for breaking down this complex situation for us.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, we encourage you to stay informed and engaged. These are the kinds of stories that shape our world. even if they're happening beyond our borders. We'll be here to bring you the latest developments as this story unfolds. Until next time, keep your ears to the ground and your minds open. The world of politics never sleeps, and neither do we. This is Gen FM signing off.